The glass walls of the 45-story Clark Technologies building trembled as CEO Mason Clark slammed his fist against his mahogany desk. Red warnings flashed across every monitor in his corner office, each screen displaying the same horrifying message: system breach, all data corrupted. His empire, built over 12 years of relentless work, was crumbling in real time. Bank accounts showed zeros where millions once sat. The merger deal worth $8 billion, supposed to be signed tomorrow morning, was now impossible. Mason stared at his reflection in the darkened windows, barely recognizing the disheveled man looking back. Hours had crawled by since he'd sent his staff home, unable to bear their worried faces. The building grew quiet, except for the hum of servers still trying to process corrupted data. This was it. 12 years of building the most innovative fintech company on the West Coast, gone in a single evening. At 11:30 p.m., Mason heard footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. Through his glass office walls, he could see a figure moving through the cubicles, the night cleaning crew. A young woman in a Navy uniform pushed her cart between workstations with practiced efficiency. As she approached his area, their eyes met through the glass. She paused, her amber eyes taking in his obvious distress. Most service workers would have hurried past, but something shifted in her expression. Instead of averting her gaze, she showed genuine concern. She knocked gently on his door. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly, her voice warm with a slight southern accent. "I don't mean to intrude, but you look like you're having a tough night. Is there anything I can do to help?" Mason gestured for her to enter, desperate for any human connection after hours of isolation. "Thank you, but I don't think anyone can help. Hackers destroyed my company. Everything we've built over 12 years is gone." The woman stepped closer, her eyes scanning the monitors with unexpected intensity. She wasn't just being polite. She was actually studying the error messages with the focus of someone who understood what she was seeing. "May I take a closer look?" she asked, already moving toward his workstation. Something in her confident manner made Mason nod. She settled into his chair with surprising familiarity, her fingers moving across the keyboard with fluid precision. "This is sophisticated," she murmured. "But they made assumptions about your backup protocols that might be wrong." Mason leaned forward, struck by her technical understanding. "Who are you?" She paused, turning to look at him. "My name is Tiana Brooks. Before I started cleaning offices, I spent 6 years as a senior systems architect at Quantum Security Solutions. I specialized in network security and data recovery." Mason stared, his mind reeling. "Why are you working as a cleaner if you're a cybersecurity expert?" "My younger sister was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition 2 years ago," Tiana explained, her voice growing softer. "I moved back home to help care for her. The only job with flexible hours and health benefits comprehensive enough for her treatments was with the cleaning company." The simple honesty of her sacrifice struck Mason deeply, but his focus remained on the crisis at hand. "Can you really help?" "I can recover everything," Tiana said, turning back to the screen. "But I'll need access to your server room in about 4 hours." Without hesitation, Mason handed her his master key card. Hope was a foreign feeling after this nightmare, but something about her confidence made him believe. Working through the night in the server room, Tiana's expertise became undeniable. She navigated his company's systems like a master, explaining complex technical concepts with clarity that impressed Mason, despite his emotional exhaustion. "Got it," she announced at dawn, but her voice carried concern along with triumph. "Mason, this is worse than a simple attack. Look." The evidence she'd uncovered was damning. Richard Hawthorne and Jennifer Walsh, 2 of his own board members, had orchestrated the attack while systematically embezzling funds for months. "They're not just thieves," Tiana said, worry clear in her voice. "They have connections to dangerous people." As if summoned by her words, Mason's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "The cleaning lady has been very busy tonight. Tell her to keep her mouth shut, or she might have an accident." Mason's blood ran cold. "Tiana, we need to get you somewhere safe. Now." Over the next few days, as Mason worked with federal prosecutors, the threats against Tiana escalated rapidly. Her car tires were slashed. Someone broke into her apartment, leaving threatening messages. But the worst came on Thursday night. Tiana was leaving her sister's apartment in Memphis. She'd driven there to check on Melody after the threats began, when she noticed a black sedan following her. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel as the car stayed behind her through several turns. When she pulled into a well-lit gas station, hoping the public space would deter whoever was following her, two men got out of the sedan. One carried something metallic that glinted under the fluorescent lights. Tiana's heart hammered as she locked her doors and called 911, but the men were approaching fast. Just as one reached for her door handle, a police cruiser pulled into the lot, a random patrol that became her salvation. The men fled, but not before one of them made eye contact with her through the window, drawing his finger across his throat in an unmistakable gesture. When Mason got her panicked phone call, he was in his car within minutes, driving through the night to Memphis to bring her back to the city. "They almost killed me," Tiana whispered when he arrived, still shaking from the encounter. "If that police car hadn't shown up—" "You're not going back to your apartment," Mason said firmly, pulling her into his arms. "Stay with me. Let me protect you." "Mason, I can't. It's not appropriate. We barely know each other. And the class difference?" "I don't care about any of that," Mason interrupted. "I care about keeping you alive." But Tiana's hesitation went deeper than propriety. How could she, a cleaning woman, belong in the world of a billionaire CEO? Mason's penthouse felt like entering another universe to Tiana. Everything was sleek, expensive, intimidating, a constant reminder of the vast gulf between their worlds. She perched awkwardly on his Italian leather sofa, afraid to touch anything. "How do you live like this?" she asked, gesturing at the museum-perfect space. "Lonely," Mason admitted, bringing her coffee. "Very lonely." He also moved quickly to protect her sister. That same day, he hired a private security firm to watch Melody's apartment and campus, and arranged for her to move into a secure dorm with 24-hour security. "You don't have to do all this," Tiana protested. "Yes, I do," Mason replied. "They threatened your family because of something you did to help me. That makes it my responsibility." The security footage from his building had revealed how the attackers knew about Tiana. Hawthorne and Walsh had hacked into the building's surveillance system weeks earlier, monitoring Mason's activities. They'd seen Tiana enter his office that night and identified her as a threat. "They've been watching everything," Mason explained grimly. "Every meeting, every decision. That's how they stayed ahead of our security measures." As days turned into weeks, the awkwardness between them began to fade, replaced by something deeper. Mason found himself looking forward to coming home, to seeing Tiana curled up on his sofa with her laptop, working on security protocols for other companies who'd heard about her skills. But Tiana maintained careful distance, always conscious of their different worlds. "I don't belong here," she said one evening, gesturing at the expensive surroundings. "This isn't my life." "It could be," Mason said quietly, sitting beside her on the sofa. "If you wanted it to be." Tiana's breath caught at the intensity in his voice, but she shook her head. "Mason, be realistic. I'm a cleaning woman who lives paycheck to paycheck. You're a billionaire. We exist in completely different universes." "I don't see a cleaning woman," Mason said, his voice raw with emotion he no longer tried to hide. "I see the most remarkable person I've ever met. Someone who sacrificed her career for family. Someone brilliant enough to solve problems that stumped the FBI. Someone brave enough to testify against dangerous criminals." He reached for her hand, his thumb tracing across her knuckles. "I see someone who makes me want to be a better man. Someone who brought light into the darkest moment of my life." Tiana pulled her hand away, standing up and moving to the windows. "You think you see that because you're grateful? Because I helped save your company, but gratitude isn't love, Mason." "This isn't gratitude," Mason said, standing and moving closer. "This is me falling in love with you. Every conversation we have, every moment we spend together, every time I watch you light up when you're working on something you're passionate about, I fall a little deeper." Tiana turned to face him, tears in her eyes. "Even if that's true, it doesn't change reality. I can't be what you need. I can't be the kind of woman who belongs in your world." "What if I don't want that world?" Mason asked, stepping closer. "What if I want whatever world you're in?" The vulnerability in his voice, the way he looked at her like she was something precious and necessary, made Tiana's resolve waver. But the rational part of her mind couldn't ignore the obstacles. "Your board members, your investors, your social circle, what would they think of you with someone like me?" "I don't care what they think," Mason said fiercely. "After everything that's happened, after nearly losing everything that really matters, do you think I care about impressing people who never really cared about me anyway?" He cupped her face in his hands, his eyes intense with emotion. Tiana, you saved my life in every way that matters. Not just my company, but my soul. You reminded me what it means to be human, what it feels like to care about someone more than quarterly profits. Mason, she whispered, her defenses crumbling. I love you, he said simply. Not despite who you are, but because of who you are, because you're strong and kind and brilliant. Because you see the world clearly and you fight for what's right. Because when I'm with you, I remember who I wanted to be before I got lost in building an empire. Tiana felt tears spill down her cheeks. I'm scared. So am I, Mason admitted. I'm terrified that you'll decide I'm not worth the complications. That you'll choose safety over whatever this is between us. It's not that simple. It is, Mason interrupted gently. Either we trust this feeling between us, or we don't. Either we're brave enough to see where it leads, or we spend the rest of our lives wondering what might have been. Looking into his eyes, seeing the raw honesty there, Tiana felt her last defenses crumble. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered. Against all logic, against all common sense, I'm falling in love with you. The kiss that followed was inevitable, tender and desperate, full of all the longing they'd both been fighting. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. I love you, Mason said again, resting his forehead against hers. I love you too, Tiana replied, finally allowing herself to believe it might be possible. The trial was swift and decisive. Tiana's evidence was unshakable, her testimony compelling and dignified. When the defense attorney tried to discredit her by highlighting her current job, she responded with such intelligence and grace that the jury was clearly on her side. Sometimes the person who cleans up everyone else's messes is exactly the right person to clean up the biggest mess of all, she said. And the courtroom erupted in applause. Hawthorne and Walsh received 25 years each. The network that had threatened Tiana and her sister was dismantled. More importantly, Tiana's reputation in the cybersecurity world was restored. Job offers poured in, but she accepted only one, chief security officer at Clark Technologies, with a salary that reflected her true worth. 6 months later, Mason stood in his office, the same office where he'd first met Tiana, holding a small velvet box. Tiana Brooks, he said, dropping to one knee. I have a proposition for you. She gasped, tears streaming down her face. I love you more than I ever thought possible, Mason continued. You saved my company, my career, and my soul. You taught me what it means to be truly wealthy, not in money, but in love and partnership. The ring caught the afternoon sunlight, brilliant and perfect. Marry me. Be my wife, my partner, my family. Help me build not just a business, but a life worthy of the love we've found. Yes, she said through her tears. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Their wedding was held in the garden of their new home, surrounded by family and friends. Melody, healthy and radiant, served as maid of honor. Even some of Tiana's former colleagues from the cleaning crew attended, holding places of honor. As they danced under the stars, Mason reflected on how much their lives had changed. Mrs. Clark, he said softly, how does it feel to be married to a man who's completely in love with you? Tiana laughed, the sound like music. It feels like the most beautiful adventure imaginable. As they swayed together, both marveling at the journey that had brought them here, Mason knew that sometimes salvation comes disguised as an ordinary person doing extraordinary things. That love isn't about finding someone perfect, but someone whose love makes you want to be worthy of it every single day. In Tiana, he'd found his miracle, his partner, and his happily ever after. So Mrs. Clark, he whispered, what adventure should we embark on next? Tiana smiled up at him, her eyes full of love and promise. All of them, Mr. Clark. Every single beautiful adventure life has to offer. And as they kissed under the starlit sky, surrounded by the people they loved, Mason knew this was just the beginning of their greatest story yet. If you enjoyed this story, kindly like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more. See you next time.